All right, let me know when you're ready to go.
Shall I count us in? Okay. Ready?
Hi.
How you doing, my Hlabi Hlabi?
Why are you shaking your head? It's true.
Hello.
Before we dive in, now I'm ready. What up, what up, what up, what up, what up? Welcome back to Quality Control Podcast with your homies, your hosts, your squeets. I don't know what else to say. Feeya and Hlabi. Yes, you are our joysticks. Apparently, I'm a joysticks heir too. That's who you guys are. I made it as a joke, and Feeya was like, "Yeah, that's it now." So we're running with that. Hi Feeya, how you doing?
I'm okay. I'm having a bit of vocal strain, so you're going to be hearing more of Hlabi's dulcet tones on this pod, which you're welcome, by the way. They're great.
Don't gas me up, bruh. I don't need it. Okay.
It's kind of what I'm here for.
I don't need my ego any bigger. Stop. Okay. Housekeeping. We have social media that you can engage in with us. Yes, on Instagram, Twitter, aka X, and TikTok. You can find us there at Quality Control Pod. Quality Control Pod, control spelt with no O's, so that's CNTRL Pod at Quality Control Pod. If you've got any suggestions, you want to write into us, want to have a little chat directly to us, you can email us at qualitycontrol.podcast11@gmail.com. That's once again qualitycontrol.podcast11@gmail.com. The control there spelled correctly with the O's. Spoiler warning as well. Today we are covering Arcane Act 2, that is episodes 4 to 6. We'll be talking everything that happened before, maybe some things that are going to happen after, but definitely everything that happens within these 3 episodes. So if you are listening and don't want to be spoiled before you go and rewatch or watch for the first time, maybe take a pause, take a break. But again, this is a quick recap episode. So I think it's a nice addendum to listen to it and then go and look out for these things if you're watching the episode for the first time. So just to let you guys know that. Thank you very much. And we're back. We've got an overview, yeah, of the next 3 episodes, episodes 4 to 6 of Act 2. So have a listen, have a goose, have a gander. Overview. The Hex Industrial Revolution has come to Piltover, and everyone is vying for power. Whether it's for more pull on Piltover City Council, more control of the Undercity, rank within respective gangs, or attempting to pull even more from the Arcane. Jace and Victor have made massive strides in their hex tech research. The contributions have massively overhauled the city, improving commerce and quality of life above ground. In the Undercity, the conditions have seemed to worsen, but even there, technology has made its improvements to the quality of life. Silco, meanwhile, has completely taken over the underworld, his Shimmer empire reaching every corner of the Undercity. Caitlin, now an enforcer, attempts to uncover what she believes to be a massive conspiracy and enlists Vi's help, freeing her from prison and essentially bringing her back from the dead. Jace is elevated to the council. Victor is nearing his deathbed, and Jinx continues to struggle with her own trauma by blowing things up and shooting anything she doesn't like. And that is our overview of Act 2, episodes 4 to 6. Before I jump into first impressions, I just want to say you're never beating your own allegations. You spelled 3 character names incorrectly. And I'm like, dyslexia deluxe. But the irony is, you've spelled them correctly in our world. That's the irony. 'Cause, yeah, Victor with the C in the show is with the K. Jace has a Y after the A, and Caitlyn is with the Y instead of an I. In the show,
So
it's with the Y instead of an I.
in case it wasn't obvious, I wrote that overview. It's not obvious because it's very short, but also I think it's quite obvious because it's missing Hlabi's general finesse and flair.
Oh, I thought you were about to
And
diss
now
me.
he's roasting me.
I thought you were about to roast me back, bro. I was waiting.
I don't have it in me. Like my voice is too sore.
Nah. Oh, you don't have it
Also, I
in
just
you.
kind of
Okay.
like listening to you. I like listening
Uh,
to you talk. You know
uh.
this. Like, I think very early on in our friendship, I think I requested Hlabi to please just come visit me every night, sit on the edge of my bed, read me a bit of a story, and then like leave so I can fall asleep.
That was the wildest
He
sentence. We
he
were
took
like
about 10
19.
years. He took about 10 years to deliver on that promise, but he did deliver eventually, and I'm very grateful. Um, but now that we're doing this regularly, I can hear his voice
Oh my gosh.
anytime I want.
Meanwhile, I'm not a fan of my voice. It's the funniest shit. I'm like, ugh.
Well, at the same time, he loves hearing his own voice, you know?
No, no, I love hearing the things I say. That's yes, this is a fact. I think I'm brilliant. It's just the tone that they're coming out. I'm like, fuck, can Idris Alba read this? Like, I don't like my voice. Oh gosh, okay. Cool. Um, we're now going to first impressions. Do you have any? What is your first impression of Act Two?
I have
Your first
so
impression.
many. So like immediately as I noticed the first episode of this arc, which is episode 4 overall, there are these like jump cuts between the two different worlds. Um, and it's so deliberately done that you kind of like they give you enough of a chunk of the overworld and then quickly they snap over into the underworld, and it's done so like cinematically. There's sound involved, non-diegetic sound involved. The color palette changes completely from these like beautiful soft blue, yellow, gold, brown hues quick into like neon green, neon purple, neon blues. It's like a really jarring back to back cut that they do every time they do one of these cuts. And it does fade about three-quarters of the way through the episode, where they then just kind of like blend a bit more seamlessly between scenes. But initially, you're jumping between the two. And it's really interesting because we've now done a time jump. It's not exactly clear, but it might have been somewhere between 5 and 8 years that we've jumped. I don't think it's as long as 10, but definitely quite a significant jump from the last time. And because your brain is still playing catch up with all the information that you're receiving, it's so discombobulating and debilitating. But it's not alienating. Like even though you're struggling to kind of catch up, you're not pushed to the side where you feel like you don't understand what's going on. You do understand it. It takes a second to get there, but because of the clues that they give you, you're with them.
On that note, where you say you're struggling to catch up, I think it feels intentional, right? You're meant to be like, what is, which it takes skill because we've both experienced things before where we're struggling to catch up because they haven't considered that we would be a bit lost, whereas they know we'll be a bit lost, and it's we're meant to feel as off kilter as the characters because they are struggling to catch up most of the time with all these changes and these interactions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is the main key is that it's the characters themselves who are they're living in that world, but they're also just trying to keep up with the things around them. And I think like immersion is a very important factor with me, which is why I tend to binge things more than I watch, episodes weekly.
Mm,
And I think the way that they've particularly done this kind of debilitating thing in the beginning of the episode very much helps with your immersion. You feel like you live in that world. You understand the laws because of the way that they're introducing things to you. Like it does take a second, but you get there.
mm.
Um, in the same vein, um, the way that they show us Jinx's PTSD flashbacks, I think, are equally as debilitating as the jump cuts, but they're very, very believable. Like, I went through a similar sort of, what do you call it, cognitive dissonance, or like an emotional nervous breakdown a couple of years ago because I was really, really stressed out. I was going through antidepressant withdrawals, and I had no idea what was going to happen in the next week. And I was also in a country where, you know, I wasn't at home. I didn't have anyone to be a safe haven. And so I think that was just before this season came out. And when I saw that, I felt very seen in that moment, like that kind of the schisms that happen in your brain when you're trying to deal with traumatic incidents are so jarring that you as a living being in the body of that mind, you're like, what the hell is happening? And the way that they portrayed Jinx's flashbacks was so, I don't want to use the word perfect, but for lack of a better word, they were perfect. I understood exactly what was happening.
They were well done. Like the way they were done was perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Um yeah, Philip, I'm thinking yeah, no, that impression yeah, it's a lot to ponder what you've just said there. Um my first impression, are you ready? You ready for my first impression? Um cool, congratulations for being ready. I don't know what that was. I'm just trying to be silly. I'm tired. The pacing in these episodes is amazing. This is the middle act, right, of three acts. So it is establishing and setting up the climax, essentially, is what all of this is for. But it doesn't feel sluggish or bloated. You know, they cram a lot of emotional through line successfully within these three episodes. We get Vi's disorientation and desperation to find her sister. We, like you said, we get Powder, aka Jinx's sense of trauma, but then also when she finds out that her sister's alive, she's like, she remembers that childhood moment, right? We've got the that motif, but the memory. We're reminded without her, without flashing, they don't flash back to that scene. We hear a voiceover of the younger Vi saying, "Light this, and I will find you." And Vi finding her and being like, "Oh shit, she's the," like just that those through lines that they're following through these things, and they're using this act to do that. We get a satisfactory revenge moment from Vi when she hits, I forget her name now, Silco's number, supposed number two, but like actual number three, because Jinx is his number two. She beats the living hell out of her very successfully, right? Even though she's like shimmered up, she beats the living crap out of her. That was amazing. And so, and I think that's what I mean, like by the pacing, things kind of slow a bit, and then they pick up speed, and then they slow a bit. The way they're moving us along is very satisfying. We don't get a slow crawl into realizing that Victor's dying. You know, it reaches that very quickly that, oh my gosh, he's knocked, he's fainted, he's dying. Oh snap. The development between Jace and Madada, there was, again, in act one, there was hints of, ooh, they may be into each other, but then it moves fast, right? But I think the sense, that's where the time jump becomes useful, because it's probably been tension and they've been developing a thing over years. We're seeing more of the conclusive part of it, of they are now getting together, even though that also feels calculated on Madada's part initially. I think the act ends with her being surprised by caring for Chase. I think when they first get together, it's a calculated move on her part, and his sincerity, I think, wins her over. And we see that in moments like with the painting, etc. So the pacing and the development of relationships that could be jilted, right, could be stilted and quick and too fast. They get all of those right. They get the tension between Caitlin and Vi right as well, because it's there's a sense of, oh, they may romance, but it's not snappy and quick. It's not cheap, you know. In fact, you don't really get the sense that they like each other. But again, not in the tropey way of I overly hate you. It's more of you're from this part, I'm from this part. I don't consider you. We're useful to each other right now, and that's what it will be. And they start looking out for each other and teaching each other little things, not these huge things of how to shoot and how to fight, which I think would be typical, right? Of like, yeah, this is your skill, this is my skill. Look how we suddenly work together. Chemistry. But rather it is, hey, you're attractive, blend into this place. Saying something very matter of fact of like when Vi's like, you're hot cupcake. Like, let's get that out of the way. You're hottie. So use your hotness and go get some information over there. Boom. Teaching her how to be street smart and think on her feet. Right. And Caitlin is teaching her how to rely on people again by virtue of looking out for her at unexpected moments. You know? And that's not Caitlin trying to be like, I'm going to change her. It's her nature. She is an enforcer who's in it to be a good cop, essentially. Yeah. Yeah.
I like that you mentioned the kind of through line because there's so much that happens. There's like that, the fact that Caitlin and Vi become, what's the word? Colleagues, not
A-
colleagues,
allies?
allies. Thank you. When the story started with Vi burglarizing Caitlin's home, technically.
Right. Well, yeah, Jace's workshop, but owned by Caitlin's parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Saviga. This was Silco's number two. That through
Yes.
line of her losing her arm, and then you're seeing it replaced with a hydraulic mechanic that's powered by what was the substance?
Shimmer. By Steam and
Shimmer.
Shimmer.
Yeah, exactly. Um, it's really really nice seeing those satisfying through lines, as you said, and having questions answered and new questions posed that will get
Mm.
answered in due course. Um, and definitely the best way to handle that enemies to lovers trope between Caitlin and Vi in the way that they did it, it didn't feel forced. It felt very, very natural. There were hints that were dropped. Um, that, as you say, your hot cupcake, deal with it. That's the way the cookie crumbles. Girls, boys, which one? And then kind of having that particular question answered, seeing Caitlin, trying to pull information from a woman and the satisfaction on Violet's face, the grin of like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I had a hunch, but
Mm.
here it is, that
And
was
so I
really
just jump
nice
in
just to see.
and alluding to that Vi didn't assume. You know, she gave her that platform, that choice of like boys, girls, whatever in between, do your thing. But I hadn't made a conclusion, and then her seeing that confirming for that. I had a hunch, but okay, cool, nice to know. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, it continues that thing of like just them feeding us, drip feeding us the information that we need at the right time, which I think also comes back to the fact that you mentioned the pacing. And we talked in Across the Spider-Verse about how just too much happened in that film. And there's a lot that happens in these three episodes of Arcane, but it never once feels overwhelming and like you need to pause for a minute and think about what you've just seen because, like, the information comes at the right time. It's something that you're not really expecting, but it's not completely out of left field. You know kind of where things are going, And the fact that they've stretched episodes into 40 minutes really, really works for the stories that they're telling us, especially with episode 3 of this second arc. There are several things that feel like a conclusion.
Such as
Violet and Jinx meeting, finally getting abducted by the owl people. What's their name?
the firelights.
Them. That happens, and that seems like a conclusion. Victor's going back to his old mentor. That seems like a conclusion.
Right.
Jason Medard, as you mentioned, them caring about each other genuinely. That feels like a conclusion. And it's
Mm.
not like, okay, here's the end of the story, but the way that they wrap up each arc is actually very interesting and very satisfying.
Yeah, that's a great point because how often do we go into the final arc of something in more recent times, like the last 10 years, I'd say, of episode of TV shows, um, feeling that there's still some unanswered questions. And how much time are they going to have to now answer all these questions within these last few episodes, these climactic moments? And you leave going, cool, that battle there was great. You've concluded the overall story, but I still have some unanswered questions. And yeah, I think you're right. They answered a lot of those questions, again, subtly. Some of them questions you didn't really realize were questions, right? Until you're like, oh, yeah, okay, cool, cool, cool. Cool. And
Such a
now
good point, yes.
the last act is gonna completely be about the last act. We know where people stand, right? We know that the conclusion being she's met Jinx or Power. Well, to her, it's Powder, right? She hasn't accepted that she's Jinx. That's what the climax is going to be for, whether she accepts that or not. The climax for for Jinx will be trying to either be with her sister or completely reject her now, right? That will be the focus of their climax. And so, like each of the
Mm.
for Victor, we know he's dying. We know he's gone back to his origins. So now it's about I'm looking for the solution. We can solely focus on that as opposed to I'm still trying to understand my life and my place. And no, he's accepted that he's dying. I accept this. Now I'm trying to find a solution. Yeah, you're right. They've set up the final act perfectly. It's just gonna be about the final act.
So, my next impression is something that you could say that this is a qualm that I have with the show. The show is mostly perfect, but there's something about this particular act that bothered me slightly. Um, and that was there's this sort of veneer of sexuality, and it borders on queer baiting.
What do you
There's
mean by
also
queer baiting for our listeners out there?
So, queer baiting is a technique in TV and film where they set up insane chemistry between two same sex characters, but then never fully realize it. The most notorious one from the last decade or two is Supernatural, where we can see this insane chemistry between Castiel and Dean, two main characters, and they never actually realize it in 15 seasons of the show. Okay, Castiel's only there from I think season 6 or something, but everyone in the fandom sees that these two characters have something a bit more for each other, and they do set it up for that, and people keep coming back because of that, and the showrunners understand that this is a draw for their queer audience, and so they're like, oh no, we're not anti-queer, we're not homophobic, here's a lesbian character whom they killed off very quickly. I stopped watching Supernatural when they killed Charlie. R.I.P. Charlie, you didn't have to die. You were killed for shock effect anyway.
Oh no. Oh no.
So there's um there's this thing that kind of gets set up in this second arc, and it's the chemistry between Victor and Jace. And it seems like they're a couple. There's a line that Victor says at the Progress Day thing, where Jace says that they're partners, and Victor says, not out there. And it seems to allude to this relationship between the two of them. And then it doesn't elaborate. And then it sort of shows Mel being interested in Jace and feeling like he's unattainable for some particular reason, but like she's Mel Madada, she's got the most money, she's on the council, she's the reason he is where he is. So why would it be such a thing that's unattainable for her unless he was emotionally involved with somebody else? And then they kind of show that that was just in her head because they do eventually, get together and they show us nothing that does acknowledge that Jace and Victor ever had any kind of sexual or romantic relationship.
Okay, can I comment on that quickly?
Hmm.
I didn't read any of that, particularly because they refer to each other as brothers at some point. I think within that same episode, or episode 6, when Chase finds out that Victor's sick, and they talk about we're brothers. For me, the
It
yes,
comes after Jace realizes how sick Victor is, where he says that
yes,
Victor saved his life and that they're
yes.
brothers. So that whole 40 minutes before that episode, before he passes out, is where I have the qualm of feeling like we're being queer baited here.
See, I don't
Like, what is
think
the
so.
situation?
I think the things of like partners in private, it's about Victor's insecurity about his deformity, or sort of like, not his deformity, but that's the wrong word. His disability, sorry. Um, that he sees as a deformity. He sees himself as different from others because he's from the Undercity, because he's then got this disability as well, and he can't be the face of anything. And so he sees Jace as the good looking one. He's the face of Hex Tech. He is on Progress Day. It's Jace's face everywhere. I think that's what he meant by, out there we're not partners. We're partners in private, but I am not seen as worthy enough to be lauded. And also, I don't think he has the confidence to put himself out there and be like, yes, I too am the Hex Tech guy. So he's kind of like the silent partner, and he's I get that he's resentful of it, even while a lot of it is from himself, of placing himself in that position. So yeah, I didn't read any.
I think a lot of that kind of thing happens for me in hindsight. Like, yes, oh,
Mm,
okay, I understand what that was about now. But you don't have enough information about Victor at the point that he says, not out there, in the way that he says it so ominously, you know? I
sure,
think that maybe a lot of queer people are always looking for signs of
maybe.
queerness in the things that they consume. And
Mm,
so, yes, in hindsight, definitely, you're right. You're absolutely right. That is what that is. But I
yeah.
think the reveal comes later. And so that's why I'm like, yes, I feel like this is queer baiting, but then like less so as we go on.
Mm.
And
And they
also in the way
focus
that
their
they kind
queer
of
story on
release.
the other people, on Vi
Yes.
and
And the way
yeah.
that they release it, because it's not a supernatural where it gets released weekly and yearly,
Yes.
there's no reason for them to bait an audience in that manner. So I sort of forgive them, which is why it's not a full qualm.
Okay.
Um, but like at that point, I was still a bit like, hmm, because then they also kind of seeded that chemistry and the tension between Vi and Caitlin. And I think the first time I heard Vi say, "You're hot, Cupcake," I fucking threw myself off the bed. I was like, oh my God, they had better not fucking tease me with this. I will be so angry if this goes nowhere. And obviously, I've seen the series before, so I know that they do kind of take it somewhere and it's not just like teasing us as audience members, but like especially after that Victor relationship thing didn't pan out, when Violet said that, I was beside myself because blah, yes, makes sense. Yes, she was in prison. Yes, she was most likely mostly around women, although apparently they seem to have a unisex prison.
Yeah, and she's probably in isolation a lot of the time.
Yeah. So Yeah, I genuinely I threw myself off the bed. I had to pause the episode and just freak out in my little room that I was renting at the time, and just come back like, please do not break this toy that you've just given me, Arcane. You're I'm in your hands right now. Um, and then there's one that again, because we only get more information as this particular arc goes on, right? Like, so we don't know things from the onset. So there's a little bit of an ick factor between between Jinx and Silco.
Mm,
Like, there's some level of inappropriateness between the two of them that makes you cringe, but it gets less
yes.
as time goes by. Like, eh, Jinx is a little bit too inappropriate in the way that she touches Silco,
Yeah.
and he doesn't immediately kind of like brush her aside. So I think it has less of the ick factor that you know that film Leon,
Yes. The professional.
where yes, where like the little girl develops the crush and then he brushes her off, and then it's like too like you really didn't need to go there, filmmaker.
Yes.
But
Yes.
and that's when I first saw Arcane, that's what I thought they were going to do about that, but then it didn't go there, and I was very pleasantly surprised.
Mm.
So that was sort of the initial. And I remember feeling this way very vividly when I first watched it and when I rewatched it subsequently that, oh, thank God it didn't go there. But I could see that they were kind of trying to push the envelope and they were like, we don't want to go there.
Yeah. I. Okay. So I'll talk about that point in my first impression. Actually. Um. Yeah. Yeah. You ready for mine? So mine is along the same lines. Whereas I said I find Silco's manipulation impressive from the perspective of the manipulator. So I think that thing that you're talking about there, where particularly Jinx, in some of her initial contact, I think that's stemming from, like you said, that thing of she's in a sort of arrested development sort of phase, but is going through the psychosis, and I think that alludes to that, and I think on Soko's part, it's almost like a misguided doting from him. This guy doesn't know how to be a father. He doesn't know really how to be a parent. And the idea of loving someone, I think, is very new to him since Vanda had betrayed him in that split, and he like cut himself off emotionally, became cold. And so I think he genuinely loves Jinx, and like you said earlier, sees her as a daughter. But I think that's new for him as a concept, and accepting it, I think, is also difficult. And so he might not really know the cues to be like, oh, you should be doing that in this moment or this in this moment. But then he is also actively manipulating because that's his nature. And so I think that's what I read that blurring in that way. I was also like, oh, this is a little, oh my gosh. And then being like, oh, they're both fucked up. That it's not that they're being creepy with each other. They're both just broken people who don't know how to be normal. Like around other people. Okay, cool. This is a father daughter
Show
relationship between
does,
a father and daughter. What dumb as fuck.
yeah, exactly. I think the writing of the show does a really great uh, job of revealing that aspect to us rather than like
Mm,
explicitly having to like tell us like, oh, here's two fucked up people in a symbiotic relationship.
yeah,
It
yeah. I
allows us to
think
discover it.
yes, and I think part of that is also how you see that they are always like things always seem to be on the edge of disaster when it concerns Jinx and Silco's willingness to excuse her behavior. It just seems at this point in the time jump that so many things have happened because of Jinx. And Silco has been so like, yeah, but she gets results. It's just like there's an edge of that people are people this thing could explode at any moment actually. People are like, actually fuck the two of you guys. Because y'all are selfish and not actually not leading us to where you promised. And so they all this sense of impending doom around them and the world around them. And he always just manages to keep Jinx in check. And I think it's towards the end when they're talking in the water, well, not the end, but when they're having that conversation in the water and he's telling her to let go, that I think he really starts to realize that all he really needs to do to keep Jinx in check is to show her love, actually. That and understanding that all the fucked up things she does is because she thinks she's trying to please him, and that this will get his approval. It's like, oh, I actually don't have to try that hard to keep Jinx in check. It is actually don't keep her in check, just point in the right direction. Actually, every time it's let her go wild, just do it over there, as opposed to trying to stop her from. Don't take targets away from her. Give her more, or give her diverse targets, and then you can focus on maintaining the things that you need to keep intact. It's like, yeah, no, you can go cause chaos there. And you see this thing of this edge of disaster, and that he doesn't have as much control as he likes to project, at least in this moment in time, when he's in his desperation, when Vi and Caitlin escape, when he catches up to them in that little shack where Vi and Powder used to live as kids, and they escape, and his freak out, that silent freak out, like we don't hear him screaming, it's again shown and not told. And he's having this meltdown because he just let them get away, and Silk was all about control. And he's like, fuck, 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 fuck. And he's losing his shit. And you're like, you're not as in and calm and cool and collected as you project to all these people. At any second, it could be over for you. Yeah. We're at 47 minutes. So let's dive in and race through the rest of our
We did
things.
chat for about 15, 20 minutes.
Nah, it was like 6. May I look at the time? Okay. Do you have a last impression? D- uh, d- you don't? Nothing about very skilled women?
Okay, my last first impression. Why the hell is every single woman on this show terrifying and skilled?
I can
They
answer
are
that.
God.
I can answer
Yeah, go
that.
on.
Because they wrote them like they're living people. That's why. They didn't write them from a gaze, like purely from a gaze perspective. They wrote these as human people with ambitions and goals. They are women, and so those ambitions and goals will be shaped by that, right? And formulated by the fact that they're women, but it's a human thing, them having those ambitions and goals. And that is why they're so terrifying and skilled, because amongst that, they're still fucking up. It's not this thing of what's the whole idea of like a Mary Sue. They're still fucking up. They're barely surviving at some points. In fact, they're surviving barely because of the sense of skill. It's like, oh, if I didn't have the skill, I would be dead in this moment. But look, I was almost dead in this moment, right? So they aren't also then written like these perfect things. Again, they're written as humans with capabilities and shortfalls and flaws and assets. Yes, sorry, I got intense there.
Hlabi coming in with the juice.
The juice. Yeah, they are terrifying and skilled. My last first impression, the show is getting darker. They're darker, and we didn't start light. Like let's say that first of all, it doesn't start off on like this bright sunny note, but it's getting darker in Act Two. Darker themes. There's a whole lot more death, like with a sense of regularity. Um, darker interactions, darker stakes. There's something ruthless and raw reflected in the energy Zorn has under Silka's control versus under Xander's control. And this darkness is also present in the above city of Piltover, where things are more calculated, they're more political, and more sinister. There's moves and counter moves happening. And we see this through like the innocence of the innocent chase becoming not so innocent or anymore. With the sense, with the framing of, oh, it seems necessary. But it's that old adage of power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So yeah, we see, and I think in Piltover we primarily see these changes and the presence of this darkness in Jace and Victor's storylines. Yeah. Okay. Let us move on to, let's finally get to our decided theme for Act Two. Um, the theme of Act Two is imbalance. Imbalance. And you see, if you've been listening up to this point, you'll see some of that reflected the sense of imbalance in the things we've discussed. But we're going to go episode per episode, looking specifically at these moments that we've picked out that represent the theme of imbalance. So, starting with episode 4, we see the imbalance of power we see imbalance in Piltover on Progress Day. This very celebration is representative of the haves above and the have nots below. We also see that the council is thrown out of balance by the addition of an eighth member when they've had 7 for generations. And then we also see that this is a sign of things to come and a sign of things to come and change in the city. Lastly, we see Marcus, the police captain, taking bribes. We learn that, oh, he's a key part of the corruption in the city, bringing that sense of imbalance where the law enforcement that's supposed to be doing good for the people both above and below is actively working against all of these facets for the benefit of one individual, in this case, Silco. Any thoughts there on the sense of imbalance in episode 4, Fee?
Mm. So I think there are a lot of people who are just making moves, you know.
Hmm.
Um, there's an exercise that we do at theatre school, which is called balancing the room, which is to say that when you're training for theatre, when you move on stage, you kind of don't want to leave any spot empty. You kind of want to fill the space and make it all seem alive, so that so that the audience is never just like, "What is this black hole?" And it kind of we do this as an exercise where we imagine ourselves on a big round plank, and the plank is balanced on a kind of point. And so we have to move ourselves and we have to keep moving ourselves. We can't stop, or else the board will tip over and will fall, into the sea of sharks or whatever it is. And it feels like the people in Piltover above and below are just, they're not making small little movements. They are jumping. And so everybody else has to jump to keep them in balance. And they keep overcompensating. So they have to
Hmm.
keep overcompensating. Otherwise, they're all going to tip the board and they're going to fall into the valley of sharks.
That is a fucking great analogy, right? It typifies them making all these moves for the now and not really thinking of the consequences of these moves. That's such a great metaphor. Damn, Fee.
I think they are considering the future, but I don't think that their sight, as you said, is very far. I think they're very short
Hmm.
sighted. Even though they're like, oh, yeah, this is going to help in the future, they can't see the long term effects of their immediate actions.
Right. Yeah. Damn. Dope, dope, dope. Okay. Theme of imbalance present in episode 5. We see Jace transition further from inventor to politician during his Godfather moment. And by Godfather moment, this is where he goes around negotiating with each of the counselors, making deals with them for their benefit to make his life easier in trying to make things secure for the citizens of Piltover. He starts the episode focusing on bringing order and safety to the city, rooting out corruption, and it ends it making concessions to council members. We see Victor obsess with his work, all work and no play, blinds him from how he is loved, or how loved he is, particularly by the assistant Sarah, who we're noticing is like trying to connect with him and trying to build something with him, via conversation, do we want to walk home together, etc. And Victor's so focused on the next great thing, the next great idea. And finally, in episode 5, we see Vi unmoored by finding out that Powder is not only alive, but works willingly for Silco. And that gives her a sense of imbalance within herself. Thoughts on episode 5?
I love that Jace and Victor seem to typify the problems of their society so well. Jace rises and rises to the top. Victor crumbles to the bottom. The scales tip so severely, and it's typifying the changes that have clearly come to Piltover. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and there's no way to balance that scale because again, everyone's just making violent moves that only have short-term effects. And it's also such a like the fact that they juxtapose Jace's rise as he goes around making deals with everyone and Victor, like pushing on and striving on and then nearly collapsing because he's this close to death. I think that pacing is also what the two societies faced between the last time we saw them and now. And it's intense and it's beautifully shown to us.
Mm. And Jace being from, yes, a minor, but still noble house of Piltover. And Victor being from Zorn, being a Zornite from the Undercity. And this thing of we're predisposed, in a sense, with these choices that they've made, we are accelerating, as you said, that divide, the sense of privilege and entitled privilege, and that the violent desperation that comes in response to that. Yeah, that's a great point. What do you think within that episode of Vi, um, that effect of finding out, or like that consequence of finding out about her sister, like that thing of what it does to her, because she still has that guilt of what I said to you. And I think it's in episode 6, which we'll get to, where she realizes they call her Jinx, and Jinx identifies as Jinx, and Violet instantly clocks that that's the last thing I called her. It's the last thing I said to her. Um, yeah, just any thoughts on Vi in that moment in
Um,
episode
Bringing it
5?
back to that theme of balance or imbalance,
Mm,
as you so brilliantly dubbed it, um, even though she was in prison all these years, she's clearly not come unmoored in the same way that Jinx has. She's still holding shit together. And I think the thing that, as you say, unmoors her is finding out that Jinx not only took to heart her last awful statement that she made to her, but also has gone over to work for the quote unquote enemy. And that is what, it makes her start jumping left to right. Whereas
mhm.
Violet was this grounded creature. Like she came back to the underworld after ages of being gone and still managed to hold her own. This was still her place
Yeah.
until she finds out who Jinx is now.
Hmm. And I think it brings up an interesting question, right, within the two sisters of nature versus nurture. And they have two different natures that would have existed together within a certain type of nurtured space, right? If they hadn't been separated. Powder, as she would still be this kooky, kind of sort of unbalanced person, but should have been in the nature of her sister, right? Raised within that, not nature, nurture, raised within that nurture of her sister's love and guidance and forever presence, right? And I'm here to protect you and allow you to thrive in yourself. And should have accepted herself as that quirky person and probably would still be a great inventor, but not a fucking psycho killer, you know? But her nature was nurtured within this chaotic environment where her trauma was untreated. And it's like, snap, her nature is already volatile, whereas Violet's nature is, as you said, very grounded. She knows she's strong. Violet, that's not any two ways about it. The thing that these two sisters share is a sense of violence. These motherfuckers love breaking it down. They love getting down. That's in them. but how it manifests, right? Vi is more controlled and it's more solid and it releases her rage very particularly and in a focused manner compared to Jinx. And if they had nurtured together instead of being separated, that would have, I think, Violet would have been her North Star, right? Would have been Powder's North Star, but also Powder would be the person to like, don't take shit so seriously all the time. And so the consequence of Violet's nature being nurtured in isolation is that she is so hard just as a person, she doesn't have a sense of joy and a sense of fun. Everything is intense and everything has this great consequence because that's all she fucking knows, right? She's been in survival mode in that prison ever since. She's been in survival mode since her parents died. She just never stopped and she didn't have a little sister who'd be like, here's a little bit of fun and chaos. Let's, don't take shit so seriously all the time. And so I think that's an interesting um, branching of the two sisters of that idea of the nature and nurture. Yeah, and how their natures were nurtured. Cool. Any thoughts on that? Can I jump to episode 6? Sweet. So in episode 6, finally we have a sense of imbalance being caused by Vi's very presence in the city of Zorn. It causes angst and chaos for so many people. Like, oh shit. This mother, again, coming back from the dead, essentially. They all thought she had died. The council seems to be brought back into balance by the forced retirement of Heimerdinger, but they have just lost their loudest voice of reason, their conscience. We also see the imbalance of power between the two cities reinforced by Piltover's ability and willingness to cut off Zorn completely as a sense of security measure. And we then also see imbalance is at last represented by the meeting of Vi, Jinx, and Caitlyn, who all want something from each other, but cannot ever see eye to eye, not as a trio, not as all three of them together. They all want something from the other person, and they're all in opposition in that moment. Yeah. Any thoughts there?
I feel like that's all quite self-explanatory.
Cool. Sweet. Cool. So let's get to our last segment before we say goodbye to y'all. Biases and guilty pleasures. This is characters that we love or hate. And floor's yours, Fee.
Oh, all right. So not trying to repeat a lot of what Hlabi said. Um, I am obsessed with Silco and Jinx. I already said that they have somewhat of a creepy relationship, but we've already said it leans more into Jinx having no concept of boundaries and Silco not paying enough attention to enforce them. The more we get to know the two of them, the more we find that Silco actually does love Jinx like a daughter. And there's definitely something inappropriate about their relationship, like the fact that he initially manipulated her to gain her trust. But in their imperfect world, as we've already dissected, and as Silco seems to be the kind of person that's incapable of real emotion, him and Jinx are kind of sweet.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, damn. Yeah. Perfect world. Soko, who seems completely incapable of emotion. He really does. And his emotive moments are with Ujinxie. Ujinx. Yeah, man.
Like Silco having as much power as he does, if he did, he seems like a very asexual character, which I enjoy looking at.
Hmm.
Like, you'd assume that someone with as much power as he does, if he did have interest in the flesh, he would be surrounded by some manner of courtesan or prostitute. But it looks very much like he just doesn't care. All that man desires is power.
Hmm. He's always alone. He's always alone with Jinx up above him. That's the only person who's consistently allowed to be around him. She comes and goes as she pleases, to the point that he sometimes doesn't know she's there because he doesn't monitor her coming and going within his personal space. If she's there, she's there. If she's not, she's not. And we see how she surprises him, right? With I forget her name now. What's her name? The number
Savika.
two, Savika. Savika? Yeah, when she surprises him with Savika tied up in her usual spot, because he probably could sense a presence there subconsciously, but to him that would be Jinx. But then he sees the whole arrow and whatnot pointing up, and it says they're liar, liar, liar. Be like, you've lied to me about my sister. He obviously instantly clocks, oh shit, she knows about Violet. Um, the fact that that can happen to me is also saying something. With a guy as present as that and as calculated as that, his super soft spot is Jinx. And again, that is refreshing that he doesn't have these intense vices, right? He's about power and his dream of a free city of Zorn. But a free city of Zorn that he controls, I think, is the key thing. Not just a sense of free city with democracy. No, no, no. I'm the mayor, the president, the Lord Father of Zorn, but we are free to do as we please, i.e., as I please. Yeah, yeah, man. My biases, and or guilty pleasure. It's not a guilty pleasure, not guilty. It's a bias. I absolutely ship Vi and Caitlyn. There's an energy and an intensity from the moment they meet each other. I think at the end of episode 4 or 5. I think it's episode 4 where she goes to the prison and fucking Vi's punching. She's got all these tattoos.
Who the hell are you?
Yeah, fucking so gangster, bruh. With that turnaround, that look, that cool ass look back, and just like, oh shit. That reintroduction of her, and you knew it was her. You like, you know it's her, but still, you're like, shit. She's boxing a fucking wall, dude. Not a punching bag. She's punching a fucking wall hard with these fucking gear like tats all over her back and neck, and you're like, God damn. So there's an intensity from the moment they meet each other. And it is more, but it's like it's more curious, right? And cautious than outright sexual. Again, that pacing and that building of it with an intention. Yeah, it's outright, it is an outright sexual, at least initially. And I like how they build up that chemistry patiently over the 3 episodes. Like, hear them getting to know each other, getting to trust each other, getting to acknowledge that there's a thing between each other. And so yeah, I absolutely ship them. And you can't make me change my mind. No one can. No one can. Yeah, man. That's my bias. We made it, dude. Guess what? Guess what? We made it. We're here at the end of our Act 2 episode. Please tune in next time where we're covering Act 3, and then the time after that where we will be instantly reacting to episode 1 of season 2. Unless they drop 3 episodes, I don't know what we're gonna do if they drop 3 in a row. Just like, oh my gosh, we have to watch it. Oh my god, at least we're both free that day. I hope. Gosh, life is real. Um, so, yeah. So yeah, thank you, Fee. Thank you for having this chat with me. I loves and appreciates you, and I'll see you next time. Say bye to the people, Fifi.
Peace and chicken grease.
Look, why are you stealing my? You know, it's just I don't like this consistent inconsistency. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. Stop it! Stop it!